Have you ever had that feeling? That tiny voice in your gut, telling you something just isn't right. Maybe it was in her tone, the way she hesitated, the way she avoided eye contact, or made too much of it. You asked a simple question, and the answer, it felt rehearsed. You wanted to believe her. You still want to believe her. But something's off. This isn't paranoia. This is human instinct. And when trust is fragile, even the smallest cracks can make you question everything. Welcome to the truth about lies. Asterisk asterisk and how to know, asterisk asterisk once and for all, if she's being honest. Let's get something clear right away. Not every suspicion means she's lying. And not every lie is a betrayal. Some lies are small. Some lies are survival. And some are the beginning of the end. This video is not about judgment. It's about clarity. It's about reading the signs, not just in her words, but in her eyes, her silence, her inconsistencies. Over the next hour, we'll break it all down. How to spot micro-expressions that signal dishonesty. The psychological science behind lying. Behavioral patterns and speech red flags. The most common signs of a guilty conscience. And what to do emotionally and logically when the truth finally comes out. But first, we need to understand why people lie, especially in relationships. 1. The feeling you can't ignore. It starts small. Not with a scream. Not with a revelation. But with a feeling. That quiet, gnawing tension in your stomach. You're sitting across from her. She's talking, maybe laughing, and everything seems normal. But something feels off. You can't explain it. You can't prove it. But you feel it. Maybe it was in the way she answered a question. Or how she suddenly looked at her phone and locked it faster than usual. Maybe it's that the usual I love you didn't carry the same warmth this time. It's not that she said something wrong. It's that the energy, the rhythm, the emotion, it all felt manufactured. This is what we call intuition. Not paranoia. Not insecurity. Not jealousy. It's pattern recognition. Your mind and body have stored thousands of emotional memories from your interactions with her. And when something breaks that pattern, your system goes on alert. You tell yourself, she wouldn't lie to me. She loves me. I'm probably just overthinking. But that doesn't stop the discomfort. And now, you're looking for clues. In her voice, her words, her actions. You're trying to make sense of the shift. Because here's the truth. When someone lies to you, it's not always the lie you feel. It's the break in connection. The change in energy. The way they stop meeting your eyes, or suddenly meet them too directly. The mechanical way they reassure you. As if they're checking boxes. And still, you want to believe her. Of course you do. Believing her means peace. Believing her means safety. Believing her means you don't have to confront the terrifying possibility that something's broken. But truth doesn't hide forever. And feelings, no matter how much we try to bury them, always surface again. So what do? First, you pause. You don't accuse. You don't interrogate. You simply observe. Observation is the beginning of all truth. Noticing the shifts, tracking the inconsistencies, feeling the emotional drop, these are not signs of distrust. They are signs of awareness. Ask yourself, has she stopped sharing details with you? Has her tone changed when she talks about her day? Does she act distant when you're near, and overly affectionate when you pull away? These might seem small, but together they tell a bigger story. One of the hardest parts of suspecting someone is lying, especially someone you love, is the guilt. You feel guilty for doubting her, for replaying her words in your head, for checking her phone when she left it unlocked, for watching her facial expressions a little too closely. You start to feel like the bad guy. But let's be very clear. Being cautious is not being cruel. Wanting honesty is not toxic. Feeling confused is not wrong. It's a natural response to emotional ambiguity. Here's where many people get stuck. They sense something is wrong, but they're afraid to follow the feeling. Why? Because if you're right, it changes everything. It means you'll have to confront the lie. It means the relationship might not survive the truth. So you convince yourself to wait. You collect mental evidence. You hope the feeling goes away. But the truth is, feelings don't just vanish. They get louder. And that whisper in your heart eventually turns into an ache you can't ignore. So what now? You start by choosing curiosity over confrontation. Instead of saying, "Are you lying to me?" you say, "Something's been feeling different lately. Can we talk?" Instead of assuming betrayal, you seek to understand. You create space for honesty. And you let her decide what to do with that space. Sometimes, your calmness will invite her truth. Other times, it won't. But either way, you've stepped into awareness. And that is the first step toward clarity. You can't control the truth. You can't force someone to be honest. But you can listen to your gut. You can read between the lines. You can choose to stop ignoring the quiet discomfort. And when you do, you stop waiting to be lied to. You start walking toward the truth. 2. Why people lie in relationships. Why do people lie in relationships? It's a painful question, but one we all must ask, especially when we start feeling that something is off. Let's begin here. Most people don't lie because they're evil. They don't wake up thinking, "How can I hurt my partner today?" In fact, many lies begin with fear, not malice. Fear of rejection. Fear of losing love. Fear of conflict. Fear of being truly seen, flaws and all. In relationships, lying is often a form of self-protection. A misguided attempt to maintain control or avoid pain. There are many kinds of lies people tell in relationships, and each one has its own motive. Let's explore them. 1. The white lie. These are the small, harmless lies. Like saying, "I love your cooking," even when you didn't. Or, "I'm fine," when you're not. White lies are often told to preserve harmony, not to deceive. But too many white lies can lead to emotional distance. Over time, the person you're with may no longer feel safe expressing the truth, and neither do you. 2. The avoidance lie. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to upset you. Sound familiar? These lies come from fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of confrontation. Fear that telling the truth will lead to a fight, or worse, a breakup. But here's the twist. Avoiding temporary discomfort often leads to long-term distrust. The truth might sting, but deception breaks. 3. The image lie. This lie protects the liar's ego. It's about looking good, appearing perfect, or maintaining control. For example, pretending to make more money, lying about past relationships, hiding struggles, mistakes, or weaknesses. People tell these lies because they're afraid that if you knew the real them, you'd leave. So they show you a filtered version. But love based on illusion is not love, it's performance. And eventually, someone breaks character. 4. The permission lie. Sometimes, people lie to get freedom without accountability. They might say, "I was with friends," when really, they were somewhere, or with someone, they shouldn't be. This lie is often a red flag, because it signals that the person wants the benefits of a relationship, without the responsibilities. They want to move freely, without answering for their actions. This isn't about freedom. It's about deceit. 5. The betrayal lie. This is the most devastating lie. It's the kind told to cover up cheating, manipulation, or abuse. It's not a lie of fear or insecurity. It's a lie of disrespect. It says, "I want what I want, even if it hurts you." It says, "You don't deserve the truth. I'll decide what you know." These lies change people. They create trauma. They fracture reality. And yet, they often start just like the others, with a small secret, a shift in tone, a broken promise. But here's something important to understand. Lying doesn't always mean someone doesn't love you. Sometimes, people lie because they love you and feel ashamed. Other times, They lie because they love themselves more. The key is to identify the pattern. Is this a one-time mistake? Or a habit? Is she lying out of fear, or because she thinks you'll never leave? Is there remorse? Is there change? Or just excuses? You don't just need the truth. You need the why behind the lie. Here's a brutal truth. Many people lie because it works, at least for a while. The lie avoids conflict. It preserves the relationship temporarily. But over time, the cost is enormous. Every lie, no matter how small, becomes a wedge. It drives you apart, one silent inch at a time. Until one day, you wake up next to a stranger and wonder when the honesty disappeared. You don't explode. You don't beg. You don't ignore it. You reflect. Ask yourself, what does this lie reveal about our relationship dynamic? Is she afraid of me, or of being herself? Does she want to rebuild trust, or just avoid consequences? Lies don't always end relationships, but they do force a choice. Rebuild or release. You can't choose that path until you understand what the lie was protecting. Because behind every deception is a deeper truth. Not just about her, but about what the relationship has become. People lie to avoid pain. But honesty is the only path to peace. And now that you understand why she might lie, you're one step closer to uncovering whether she ever truly meant to be honest at all. 3. Micro-expressions, the truth in her face. She says she's telling the truth. Her words sound convincing. Her story makes sense. But something still doesn't sit right. The answer might be in her face. Not the big expressions. Not the rehearsed smiles or practice calm. But the micro-expressions. The involuntary, fleeting signals that slip out before the brain can cover them up. They last less than half a second. You can't fake them. And most people don't even know they are doing them. These tiny, automatic reactions often reveal a person's true emotional state, even when their words say something different. Let's break it down. Micro-expressions are subtle facial movements that occur when someone feels a strong emotion but tries to suppress or hide it. They are like emotional leaks. You might not notice them consciously, but your brain does. That's why you get a weird vibe when someone lies, even if they say all the right things. There are 7 universal micro-expressions. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, contempt. Let's go through a few that matter most when you suspect someone is lying. Even when someone's trying to stay calm, anger can flash across the face. It might look like eyebrows tightly pulled down, eyes slightly narrowing, lips pressed together tightly. You might see it just for a split second, when you question her, when you mention a name, or when you ask her to repeat something. She may not yell. She may smile afterward. But if you catch that flash of tension, that's real emotion slipping through. Lying often brings anxiety, and anxiety shows up as fear on the face. Key signs: raised eyebrows, especially the inner corners, eyes widening suddenly, lips slightly stretched horizontally, like a grimace. If you mention something close to the truth, and you see this flicker of panic, she might not say it out loud, but her face already did. This is one of the most dangerous micro-expressions in a relationship. Contempt isn't just anger. It's disrespect. It's a feeling of superiority, of dismissiveness, of being above the other person. Contempt often appears as a one-sided smirk, a small, raised corner of the mouth, a brief eye roll, a flash of sarcastic expression followed by a neutral one. If you're asking for honesty, and her face answers with contempt, you may not just be dealing with lies. You may be dealing with someone who no longer respects your intelligence or your boundaries. Micro-expressions are fast. Too fast for most people to register clearly. But your intuition catches them, even if you don't realize it. That's why you feel that discomfort after a conversation that should feel fine. That's why you think, she answered me, but something was off. It's not just what she said. It's how her face reacted when she said it. Microexpressions are most likely to appear when someone is directly questioned, confronted with evidence, trying to make a story sound believable, pretending not to care. Here's what you do. Observe. Don't interrupt. When she's talking, keep your own expression neutral. Let her explain. Let her fill the silence. And watch. Not aggressively, just attentively. It's in the milliseconds where truth escapes. Let's say you ask her, "Where were you last night after work?" She answers calmly, "Just at dinner with friends." But as she says it, her eyebrows lift sharply, her mouth twitches to one side, or her eyes dart quickly to the left and back. These aren't random. They are stress signals. And the more she tries to act relaxed, the harder it becomes to control her involuntary expressions. The face speaks before the voice finishes. Not every twitch is a lie. Some people just get nervous under pressure. You don't need to be a detective. You just need to be present. Start watching not just what she says, but how her body feels while saying it. The truth may be brief, but it's never invisible. But here's how you tell the difference. Nerves are consistent. The anxiety stays throughout. Deception causes flickers. Emotions spike at specific moments, when you're close to the truth. If her voice is steady, but her face flinches only when you ask about a certain person, location, or time, that's your clue. Here's something powerful to remember. The body has no poker face. Words are crafted. Stories are rehearsed. But the body reacts in real time. That's why microexpressions are so revealing. They don't lie. They simply react. 4. Changes in her behavior, the subtle signs. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens quietly, bit by bit. Not with a fight, but with a shift. A text left unanswered. A joke that used to make her smile, now met with silence. A distance you can't see, but you can feel. These are the subtle signs. Before the truth comes out, her behavior changes. And while words can be rehearsed, behavior rarely lies. We often miss these signs not because they're invisible, but because we don't want to see them. So in this chapter, we'll walk through the behavioral red flags, one by one, clearly, so you don't have to second-guess your own instincts anymore. Let's begin. 1. She's suddenly overprotective of her phone. Let's start with the most common, and often the most telling. She used to leave her phone face up. Now, it's always face down. She used to answer messages in front of you. Now, she turns her screen away or leaves the room entirely. You ask casually, "Who was that?" And instead of a natural answer, you get a vague shrug. Or worse, defensiveness. Behavioral shift detected. It's not the phone. It's the change in behavior around the phone that matters. 2. Her routine changes without explanation. She used to text when she got off work. Now, she disappears for hours and says, "Oh, I forgot." She used to love calling before bed. Now she says she's too tired. You might think, people change. And they do. But in healthy relationships, changes are usually shared, not hidden. Sudden, unexplained changes in habits often indicate that something or someone is demanding their attention elsewhere. 3. Her emotional availability drops. You ask her how her day went. She gives a one-word answer. You bring up something important, something you care about, and she seems distracted or detached. She might still be physically there, but emotionally, she's gone. When emotional presence fades, it's often because energy is being spent elsewhere. And energy doesn't lie. 4. She stops initiating. Whether it's a conversation, a touch, a plan for the weekend, you realize you're the one holding everything together. You initiate every date, every text, every connection. And without your effort, things fall silent. This is more than forgetfulness. It's emotional withdrawal. And often, it's the beginning of disconnection. 5. She starts getting defensive, fast. You ask a simple question. "Who were you texting?" And she snaps back. Why are you always checking up on me? The volume doesn't match the question. The intensity feels off. This is known as reactive defensiveness. When someone overreacts to simple curiosity, it's often because they're already feeling guilty. They're preparing to defend something, even if you haven't accused them yet. 6. She overcompensates. On the flip side, some people don't become distant when they lie. They become performers. They start saying, "I love you" more. They buy you gifts out of nowhere. They shower you with affection, suddenly, strangely. This can feel good at first. But if it doesn't match her usual personality, it may not be affection. It may be guilt. Sometimes, overcompensating is a subconscious attempt to hide emotional absence behind acts of kindness. Pay attention to the why behind the gestures, not just the gestures themselves. 7. She stops sharing the little things. In a healthy relationship, it's the little moments that build connection. What happened at work? A funny meme she saw. A random story from the day. But now, you find out about her day through social media, not from her. You ask how she's doing, and the answer is vague or clipped. When sharing stops, intimacy breaks. And when someone is emotionally elsewhere, sharing becomes optional. 8. Her energy feels different. Sometimes, it's not about what she says, or even what she does. It's just the energy. She walks in the room and doesn't greet you the same. She laughs, but it doesn't feel real. Her presence feels like a stranger's, not your partner's. You know what she was like when she was truly connected. You don't need a lie detector to notice when that connection is gone. Trust that feeling. It's not paranoia. It's perception. You've seen the signs. Now what? You don't need to confront aggressively. You don't need to prove anything. You need to create a space where the truth is possible. Here's how. Start the conversation gently. Say, "I've been feeling some distance between us. Can we talk?" Observe how she reacts. Is she calm and open? Or cold, defensive, dismissive? Listen more than you speak. People tell you everything, if you give them room. If she's being honest, you'll feel it. And if she's hiding something, her behavior won't let her hide forever. The signs are always there. You just have to stop ignoring them. People don't just wake up and lie. They shift. They distance. They disconnect. Not always in words, but always in behavior. Behavior doesn't lie. It whispers what words won't say. And if you're listening closely, you already know the truth. 5. Emotional disconnection, when the bond starts breaking. Love doesn't die loudly. It doesn't scream or slam doors. It fades. Quietly. Silently. One ignored message. One skipped conversation. One night where you're lying beside her, yet feel completely alone. This is emotional disconnection. When your partner is physically present, but emotionally gone. We often think the end of a relationship comes with betrayal, or big fights, or shocking discoveries. But more often, it begins with silence. A soft, creeping distance. And a slow erosion of the bond that once held you together. In this chapter, we'll dive into what emotional disconnection really looks like, why it happens, and how to tell if the emotional tie between you and her is already unraveling. 1. The decline of deep conversations. Remember when you used to talk for hours? About your dreams, your fears, your childhood stories? Now, conversations feel like checklists. What's for dinner? Did you pay the bill? Good night. Nothing is wrong, technically, but nothing feels alive either. This isn't about bad communication. It's about a lack of connection. When real conversation dies, the relationship begins to fade. 2. The phone feels closer than you do. You're sitting next to her, but her attention is somewhere else, on her screen, on her feed, on someone else's life. You try to talk. She nods, but the replies are short, distant, automatic. It's not just distraction. It's emotional absence. When the phone holds more intimacy than you do. The emotional bond is breaking. 3. The energy between you has shifted. You can't explain it. But it's there. The warmth is gone. The inside jokes don't land the same. Even hugs feel colder, shorter, awkward. This is the energy of disconnection. When someone is emotionally invested, their energy wraps around you. When they're pulling away, that energy fades. You don't just feel it. You miss it, deeply. 4. She stops sharing her world. She used to tell you everything. Now, you learn about her life through second-hand sources, Instagram stories, friends, or not at all. You ask, "How was your day?" And she says, "Fine." You ask, "Anything new?" And she shrugs. The window into her inner world is closing. And you're left outside, knocking, with no answer. 5. Affection becomes routine, or vanishes. Physical connection isn't just about attraction. It's an emotional language. When she used to hold your hand, lean on you, initiate contact. That was connection. But now? Kisses feel like obligations. Hugs are quick and emotionless. Touch becomes rare or mechanical. If intimacy becomes a chore, not a choice. The emotional bond is suffering. 6. She avoids emotional topics. You bring up concerns. She changes the subject. You try to express how distant she feels. She says, "You're overthinking it." Avoidance isn't indifference. It's fear of confrontation. But over time, consistent avoidance leads to emotional starvation. When one partner stops addressing the emotional state of the relationship, they've already begun detaching from it. It doesn't always start with betrayal. Sometimes, it starts with burnout, or emotional neglect, or simply the relationship evolving in different directions. Here are a few common causes. Unresolved conflicts that pile up until communication breaks. Lack of vulnerability, when one or both people stop sharing deeply. Unmet emotional needs that push someone to withdraw. Attraction fading, not physically, but emotionally. Or, in some cases, the beginning of emotional investment in someone else. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. One of you feels like you're reaching out in the dark, and no one's reaching back. But only if both people are aware of it, and willing to work on it. That starts with honesty. Try asking, "Do you feel distant from me lately? Are we still emotionally connected, in your eyes? Is there something you're afraid to say?" These questions are not accusations. They're invitations. If she opens up, there's hope. If she gets defensive, distant, or shuts down completely, she may have already checked out emotionally. The truth is, you can't force connection. You can only invite it. You can't fix a relationship alone. You can only show up and see if she meets you there. If she doesn't, you may already have your answer. Emotional disconnection doesn't break you in one moment. It drains you over time, until the silence between you is louder than any words ever spoken. And if that's where you are now, it's not weakness to notice. It's strength to face it. 6. Body language, what she's not saying out loud. She says she's fine. She says everything's okay. She says she's still in love. But her body tells a different story. It shifts. It closes. It withdraws. Because words can lie. But body language almost never does. In this chapter, we'll explore the unspoken language of human behavior. What her posture, her movements, her eye contact, and even her silence might really be saying. This is where the real truth lives. Our brains are wired to detect danger, deception, and emotional shifts through nonverbal cues. Long before humans spoke in words, we read body tension, facial expression, distance, stillness. So when you feel like something's off, but you can't explain why, you're probably responding to nonverbal misalignment. What someone says doesn't match how they act. That gap is often where the lie lives. 1. Closed-off posture. If she crosses her arms tightly, hunches away from you, tilts her body sideways during conversation, pulls her legs in when sitting next to you. These are defensive postures, subconscious signals that say, "I'm protecting myself." It doesn't always mean she's hiding something huge, but it does mean she's withdrawing energy, guarding herself emotionally or mentally. If her posture used to be open and relaxed, and now it's tense and guarded, that's not random. That's communication. 2. Avoiding eye contact. You ask her something serious, and her eyes do anything but meet yours. They dart left. They scan the floor. They blink rapidly. Why? Because eye contact is connection. And when someone's hiding, avoiding truth, or feeling ashamed, eye contact becomes uncomfortable. Now, it's important not to confuse shyness or nervousness with deception. But in a relationship, consistent eye avoidance during tough topics is a red flag, especially if it wasn't there before. 3. Creating physical distance. She sits at the edge of the couch. She steps back slightly when you get close. She flinches when you touch her shoulder, or quickly pulls away from a kiss. These are all spatial cues your body is being told, without words, "Not right now." Physical intimacy fades when emotional distance grows. It might not be conscious. She may not even realize she's doing it. But your body feels the gap long before your brain admits it. 4. Self-soothing gestures. She fidgets with her jewelry, touches her neck, plays with her sleeve, tugs at her hair, scratches her arm. These actions are called self-soothing behaviors. They often appear when someone feels uncomfortable, exposed, or guilty, especially during emotionally intense conversations. If you're asking questions and she suddenly starts fidgeting in these ways, pay attention. Her words might be saying "I'm fine," but her body's saying "I'm not." 5. Sudden stillness. Believe it or not, sometimes the biggest giveaway isn't movement. It's the lack of it. When someone freezes completely, stops blinking, stops shifting, holds their breath, that's often a freeze response. In high-stress moments, when fight or flight isn't possible, the body instinctively becomes still to avoid detection, an evolutionary defense. So if a simple question leads to an unnaturally long pause, motionless body, and delayed blinking, something deeper is being processed or hidden. 6. The half smile. A genuine smile reaches the eyes. It causes crow's feet, raises the cheeks, and creates warmth. But a half smile, one that barely moves the lips or only curls one corner of the mouth, is a sign of discomfort, sarcasm, contempt, or forced politeness. If you say, "I miss how we used to be," and she gives a quick, half-hearted grin, that's not connection. That's emotional avoidance. When someone lies, especially to someone close, they try to act normal, but the body gives them away. Common signals include over-explaining, touching the face, especially around the mouth, rapid blinking, voice pitch rising slightly, shifting weight from side to side, delayed responses, then quick overcorrection. You don't need to memorize every cue. You just need to notice the shift. How does she behave when she's relaxed and honest? Now compare that to when something feels off. The gap is where the lie hides. The truth doesn't always speak. Sometimes, it shows. You can learn more about a person by watching them silently for 60 seconds than talking for an hour if you ignore the signs. So next time she answers a tough question, watch, don't just listen. Look at her shoulders, her eyes, her hands, her posture. Does her body agree with her words? If not, that's your answer. In every conversation, there are two dialogues. The one that's spoken, and the one the body tells without permission. If they don't match, trust the one that doesn't lie. 7. Excuses, deflections, and half-truths, the language of evasion. Lies don't always sound like lies. Sometimes, they sound like logic, like perfectly crafted sentences, like reasonable answers. But if you listen closely, they are not clear. They are not honest. They are not whole. They're evasive. They avoid. They spin. They deflect. In this chapter, we'll explore the language of evasion. How people use excuses, half-truths, and verbal misdirection to hide what they don't want to say out loud. Because not all lies are spoken directly. Some are spoken in circles. Why people evade instead of lie directly. Lying outright is risky. It's obvious. It's traceable. It triggers suspicion. But evasion? Evasion is safer. It offers just enough information to seem believable, but never the whole truth. Evading lets someone protect themselves without admitting guilt. And once you recognize this pattern, you'll see it everywhere. 1. The constant excuse maker. You ask, "Why didn't you reply last night?" She says, "I was tired. Work's been crazy. I didn't even see the text." The first time? Believable. The second time? Maybe. But when every question has an excuse, you're not being told the truth. You're being managed. Excuses are often used to protect behavior she doesn't want questioned. They sound like reasons, but they're really shields. If someone always has an explanation, start asking what they're trying to avoid explaining. 2. The master of redirection. You bring up how distant she's been. Instead of addressing it, she flips the script. "Why are you always so negative? You're overthinking again. You're just being paranoid." This is called deflection. Instead of answering your concern, she creates a new one, about you. Suddenly, you're on defense. Not her. Deflection turns the spotlight around, so she never has to stand in it. It's a classic manipulation technique, and it thrives on your emotional confusion. 3. The wall of vagueness. You ask where she was. She says, "Out." You ask who she was with. She says, "Just some people." The answers are technically not lies, but they're also not information. They're placeholders, verbal smokescreens. When someone wants to hide something, they'll often say less, not more. Watch for patterns of one-word replies, vague timelines, impersonal descriptions, skipping key details. This isn't forgetfulness. This is intentional gray space, and it's where deception often lives. 4. The overtalker. Ironically, some people don't evade by staying quiet. They evade by talking too much. You ask one simple question, and you get a 5-minute monologue. Suddenly, you're lost in details. People you don't know, things that don't matter. A story with no clear point. That's not storytelling. That's camouflage. This technique is known as over-explaining. It overwhelms your logic with noise, so you stop listening for the truth. But here's the trick. Truth is usually simple. Lies are usually complex. If her story needs paragraphs instead of a sentence, ask yourself why. 5. The half-truth giver. Half-truths are the most dangerous lies, because they contain just enough truth to feel safe. She tells you she saw a friend. She doesn't say that friend was someone she used to date. She says she didn't go out alone, but she won't say who she was with. She didn't technically lie, but she intentionally omitted the part that matters. This is not honesty. This is curated truth. It's like showing you one clean room, while hiding the rest of the house in chaos. And you deserve more than that. 6. Word games and reframing. Sometimes, evasion sounds like semantics. We were just talking. I didn't cheat, I just had feelings. I wasn't lying, I just didn't tell you yet. Technically, I never promised. These aren't just phrases. They're escape hatches. They're used when someone's trying to avoid consequences, but knows the truth would hurt you. This isn't about precision. It's about manipulation. When someone prioritizes wordplay over sincerity, they've already stepped outside the boundaries of honesty. When you sense avoidance, don't escalate. Don't corner. Don't accuse. Instead, observe. Does she give clear answers, or does she dodge? Do her words match her actions? Does she seem calm when questioned, or defensive and scattered? And when you're ready, ask directly. You seem to be avoiding the question. Why is that? Or, I don't feel like I'm getting the whole story. What aren't you telling me? These aren't confrontations. They're invitations to truth. And if she's unwilling to accept that invitation, you've already learned what you need to know. Words are easy. They are flexible. They bend. But truth? Truth is rigid. It holds still. And if someone keeps moving around it, it's because they're not ready to face it. But maybe you are. When you know the truth, what comes next? You asked yourself a simple question. Is she being honest with me? And now, after signs, shifts, silences, and subtle changes, you're starting to see it. Maybe the words don't match the energy. Maybe the touch no longer carries meaning. Maybe you've been holding on to a version of her that no longer exists. So now comes the real question. What do you do with the truth you didn't want, but can't ignore anymore? This is the hardest part. Not the lie, but the realization. 1. Recognizing you've outgrown the illusion. There's a version of this story you've been telling yourself. That she still cares. That it's just a phase. That if you try harder, love stronger, stay longer, she'll come back. But if the silence has become louder than the connection, if her words feel scripted and her presence feels absent, then you may have outgrown the illusion of her. Even if you haven't outgrown your love, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. 2. Stop arguing with the evidence. When you've gathered the signs, the evasions, the shifts in tone, the loss of intimacy, the unexplained behavior, don't gaslight yourself into believing your gut is lying. You saw what you saw. You felt what you felt. And most importantly, you know what you know. The most dangerous lie is not the one they tell you. It's the one you tell yourself to avoid feeling the pain of knowing it's over. 3. Your intuition isn't just a feeling. Throughout this journey, you've heard it. The voice in the back of your head. The tightness in your chest. The restlessness in your soul. That's not paranoia. That's intuition, the mind picking up patterns before your heart is ready to accept them. When you feel that deep ache of something isn't right, that's not just anxiety. That's often accuracy. Trust it. 4. You can't fix what she's unwilling to face. You could communicate better. You could be more patient. You could give her space. But no matter how much work you're willing to do, if she's not meeting you halfway, you're not in a relationship. You're in a one-sided negotiation with silence. You can't fix someone who isn't open. You can't reach someone who isn't trying. And you shouldn't have to chase love to prove you're worthy of it. 5. What happens after the truth? So what now? You accept it. You grieve it. You learn from it. And slowly, you begin again. Not with someone else. With yourself. You rebuild the parts of you that were eroded by confusion and doubt. You trust your perception again. You set boundaries around your heart. And eventually, you'll be able to love again. But this time, from wisdom. Not from fear of loss. You didn't lose because she lied. You didn't fail because she changed. You simply grew aware of what was no longer real. That awareness is painful. But it's also powerful. It sets you free. Because when the truth is finally clear, you're no longer stuck wondering. You're no longer wasting time chasing closure. You're no longer doubting yourself in the name of love. You are awake. And that's the beginning of something stronger than honesty. It's the beginning of self-respect. If this video gave you clarity, if it helped you see what you've been afraid to admit, then remember this. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not too much. You are someone who loved deeply, and now must love yourself just as deeply. The truth hurts, but staying in confusion hurts more. So let this be your turning point. From doubt to dignity. From fear to freedom. You are ready.